Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. My name is Ronald Bennett, and 2 weeks before my wedding, the woman I was about to marry asked me for one last night of freedom. Not a girl's dinner, not a weekend at a spa. She wanted one night where she didn't have to act like she was engaged. That single sentence ended our relationship, even though she didn't realize it yet. I met Lillian 4 years earlier at a neighborhood charity fundraiser. She wasn't loud or flashy. She was confident, easy to talk to, and knew exactly how to make people feel comfortable. We started dating a few weeks later. We built a good life together. After 3 years, I proposed. A year after that, we bought a small house outside the city and started planning our wedding for late spring. Everything was already paid for. The venue, the photographer, the caterer. Both of our families had booked hotels. My older brother, Patrick Bennett, was my best man. Lillian had already gone to 3 dress fittings. As far as I knew, we were counting down the days. Then she started changing. It wasn't dramatic. She spent more time texting her girlfriends. She talked constantly about enjoying the last days before marriage. Every conversation somehow came back to how different life would be once she became a wife. I didn't think much of it. Until Tuesday night. We were sitting on the back patio after dinner when she put her glass on the table and looked at me. "Can we talk about something?" I nodded. "Go ahead," she smiled nervously. "You have to promise you won't get upset before I explain." "I don't make promises like that," I answered. "Just tell me." She took a slow breath. "My friends booked a weekend at a beach resort." "Okay. They want one last girls' trip before the wedding." "Sounds fine." She looked relieved. "But," she said. I waited. "I don't want to go as somebody's fiancé." I frowned. "What does that mean?" She leaned forward. "I just want one last night where I don't feel accountable to anyone." I looked at her without saying a word. She continued. "I don't mean I want to cheat." "Then what do you mean?" "I don't want rules. I don't want to think about being someone's future wife for one night. I just want to feel completely free before I settle down." I folded my arms. "So, if some guy buys you a drink?" "I don't know." "If someone flirts with you?" "I don't want to think about what I'm supposed to do." I held her eyes. "And if someone kisses you?" She hesitated. I just, I don't want expectations hanging over me." That was all I needed to hear. I nodded once. "If that's what you need," I said calmly, "then go." Her shoulders relaxed. "Really?" "Yes." She smiled. "I knew you'd understand." I smiled back. She thought I'd given her permission. What I'd actually given her was the beginning of the end. The next morning, I left for work like any other Wednesday. I kissed Lillian goodbye, grabbed my coffee, and walked out the front door. Nothing about me suggested the wedding had just been canceled. She texted around lunchtime asking what I wanted for dinner. I replied, "Whatever you feel like making." She answered with a heart emoji. By then, I had already called the wedding venue. "I need to cancel our reservation," I told the coordinator. There was a long pause. "Are you sure, Mr. Bennett? The wedding is less than 2 weeks away." "I'm sure. The deposits are non-refundable." "I understand." One call became 5. The photographer, the florist, the DJ, the transportation company. I didn't argue over money. I told each of them to keep the deposits and move on. By Thursday afternoon, I had arranged a furnished apartment through my company. It wasn't fancy, but it was ready immediately. That evening, I called my brother. Patrick answered on the second ring. "You sound serious." "I need your truck Saturday." "What happened?" "Lillian wants one last night of freedom before the wedding." He was quiet for several seconds. "Freedom how?" "The kind where she doesn't want to feel engaged." His answer came instantly. "So, there isn't going to be a wedding?" "No." "When do we move you?" "Saturday morning. She leaves Friday." "I'll be there." That was the entire conversation. Patrick never tried to convince me to fight for the relationship. He knew me well enough to understand my decision had already been made. Friday morning arrived. Lillian rolled her suitcase to the front door wearing sunglasses and a bright white sundress. She looked excited. "You've been amazing about this," she said. "I appreciate that." I nodded. She wrapped her arms around my neck. "When I get back, we can focus on the wedding." I looked at her. "You wanted one last taste of being free." She laughed. "Exactly. I hope you find whatever you're looking for." She smiled, thinking I meant it as encouragement. "I will." Before climbing into her friend's SUV, she turned back. "You trust me, right?" I didn't hesitate. I trust that people make the choices they truly want. She tilted her head. What does that mean? It means exactly what it sounds like. She studied my face for a moment, then shrugged. I'll see you Sunday. I watched the SUV disappear around the corner. The moment it was out of sight, I walked back inside, picked up my phone, and called Patrick. She's gone. I'll hook up the trailer, he said. Less than an hour later, his truck pulled into my driveway. We didn't waste a minute. Everything that belonged to me was leaving that house before Lillian ever came home. Patrick backed the trailer into the driveway while I opened the garage. Neither of us talked much. There wasn't anything left to debate. He carried boxes. I carried furniture. By noon, my office was empty. My clothes, tools, family photos, and every personal document were packed. I emptied the small safe in the closet, taking my passport, important paperwork, and the cash I kept for emergencies. Patrick looked around the bedroom. You taking the television? I shook my head. No, leave it. The dining table? Bought together. It stays. The couch? It stays too. I wasn't interested in stripping the house bare. I was removing myself from it. By late afternoon, my side of the garage was empty, and my truck was loaded. Before leaving, I walked through every room one last time. The house was quiet. Just 2 weeks earlier, we'd been arguing over flower arrangements and honeymoon excursions. Now it was simply another property I no longer planned to live in. I sat at the kitchen island and wrote a single page. Not an apology, not an angry speech, just the truth. You wanted one last night without being someone's fiancé. You have it. I won't marry someone who needs to feel single before promising forever. The wedding has been canceled. I wish you the life you chose. Ronald. I folded the letter once and placed it in the center of the kitchen island where she couldn't miss it. Patrick looked over my shoulder. That's it? That's enough. He nodded. As we were locking the front door, my phone buzzed. It was Lillian. I answered. Hey, she said over loud music. This place is beautiful. You should see the ocean. I hope you're enjoying yourself. I am. She laughed. The girls already dragged me to the pool. Good. You sound busy. I've had a productive day. She smiled through the phone. See? I told you this weekend would be good for both of us. It will. I'll call you tomorrow. You don't have to. What? Spend your weekend however you want. There was a short silence. You really are okay with this? I've accepted it. I love you. I let 2 seconds pass. Take care of yourself. Before she could say anything else, I ended the call. Patrick raised an eyebrow. You didn't say it back. No. We drove away. Halfway to my new apartment, my phone started vibrating again. This time, it wasn't Lillian. It was my mother. Ronald, she said. The wedding planner just called your father. Is this really happening? Yes. She was quiet. Then she asked, Are you certain? I've never been more certain. She sighed softly. I'm sorry it ended this way. So am I. That evening, every guest received the same email. The wedding had been canceled due to personal circumstances. No explanations, no accusations, just a fact. By the time Lillian finished her weekend of freedom, there wouldn't be a wedding waiting for her. Lillian came home Sunday just after 4 in the afternoon. I wasn't there. Neither was my truck. The neighbors later told me they saw her stand in the driveway for nearly a minute, looking confused before walking inside. About 20 minutes later, my phone started ringing. I watched it vibrate across the kitchen counter of my new apartment. Lillian called 6 times. I let every call go to voicemail. Then came the text messages. She asked where I was. She asked why the house looked different. She asked why there was a letter sitting on the kitchen island. I read every message. I answered none of them. An hour later, Patrick called. I figured she'd be blowing up your phone. She is. You want to know what happened? Go ahead. Our cousin Melissa was over there when she got home. She called your mother in tears. I stayed quiet. Patrick continued. She kept saying she didn't understand. Then your letter finally made sense to her. I expected that. She drove straight to the wedding venue. I almost smiled. They told her you canceled everything Friday morning. Good. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. That evening, Lillian showed up at my parents' house. My father answered the door. Later, he told me exactly how the conversation went. Where's Ronald? She asked. He isn't here. I need to talk to him. I don't think you do. She stared at him. Please. I just need 5 minutes. My father folded his arms. My son already gave you his answer. You don't understand. No, he replied calmly. I understand perfectly. She tried again. I never cheated. His expression never changed. That isn't the point. She stood there with tears running down her face. I just wanted one weekend before the wedding, and Ronald wanted a wife who didn't need one. She had no response. She turned around and walked back to her car. The next morning, my phone rang again. This time it was Derek Lawson, one of my closest friends. I just got off the phone with Lillian. I figured she'd start calling everyone. She says you're overreacting. What do you think? He laughed once. I think if my fiancée told me she wanted one weekend without accountability, I'd have canceled the wedding too. So we're on the same page. Absolutely. Before hanging up, Derek added one more thing. By the way, somebody posted pictures from that beach resort. I didn't ask to see them. I didn't need to. Whatever happened there no longer mattered. The wedding ended the moment Lillian decided commitment could be paused for a weekend. Everything after that was just proof that I had made the right decision. 3 days later, I got a call from someone I hadn't expected. Grace Sullivan. She had been one of Lillian's bridesmaids. We'd always gotten along, but we were never especially close. Can we meet? She asked. I only need 15 minutes. I agreed. We met at a quiet coffee shop after work. Grace looked exhausted. She wrapped both hands around her coffee but never took a sip. I almost didn't come, she admitted. Then why did you? Because you deserve to know what happened. I leaned back. Go ahead. She looked around before lowering her voice. Lillian told us she just wanted one last girls' trip. I know, but that isn't how the weekend ended. I said nothing. Grace continued. The first night, a group of guys rented the VIP cabana next to ours. I waited. They started buying drinks. And? At first, Lillian kept saying she was getting married. Grace paused. But after a while, she stopped mentioning it. My expression didn't change. One of the guys kept flirting with her all evening. What happened? They danced. I nodded once. Then? Grace looked down. I saw him kiss her. The cafe was silent except for the sound of dishes behind the counter. I wasn't surprised. Grace swallowed. He gave her his room key. And? They disappeared upstairs together. For how long? Almost 2 hours. She looked at me carefully. I don't know exactly what happened after that. I won't lie and pretend I do. I appreciated that. She wasn't exaggerating. She was simply telling me what she had seen. Finally, she asked the question she'd probably been carrying all week. Does hearing this change anything? I shook my head. No, she frowned. You already knew? I knew enough. What do you mean? I folded my hands on the table. I canceled the wedding before she even packed her suitcase. Grace stared at me. You... what? The moment she asked for one last weekend without responsibility, I knew she wasn't ready for marriage. She looked genuinely stunned. So, even if nothing had happened, I still would have left? Grace slowly nodded. I don't think she understands that. She will, eventually. Grace sighed. She keeps telling everyone she made one mistake. I looked directly at her. No, she waited. The mistake wasn't kissing another man. It wasn't disappearing upstairs. It wasn't whatever happened behind that hotel room door. Grace stayed silent. The mistake was believing commitment could be switched off whenever it became inconvenient. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Then Grace finally whispered, I wish someone had made her understand that before the trip. So do I. I stood, thanked her for her honesty, paid for both coffees, and walked out. For the first time since everything happened, I knew there was nothing left to wonder about. A little over a year passed before I saw Lillian again. By then, my life looked completely different. I'd been promoted at work, moved into a condo closer to the office, and settled into a routine that no longer included wondering what could have been. The wedding felt like a different lifetime. I ran into her at a charity dinner hosted by one of our clients. I was talking with a coworker when I heard someone quietly say my name. Ronald. I turned around. For a second, neither of us spoke. She looked thinner than I remembered. Older somehow, not in years, in the way regret settles on someone's face. Can we talk? She asked. I'll give you 5 minutes. We stepped onto the outdoor terrace. She held onto the railing for a moment before looking at me. I've wanted this chance for a long time. You have it. She nodded. I've been in therapy. I didn't respond. My therapist asked me why I needed that weekend so badly. And? I couldn't answer. She gave a small, embarrassed laugh. I kept saying I just wanted freedom. She looked down. But freedom from what? I stayed quiet. There wasn't anything you were taking away from me. No, you never controlled me. No, you never told me who I could see. No, she rubbed her hands together. I confused commitment with losing myself. I let her finish. I honestly thought you'd argue with me. She looked up. I thought you'd get angry. We'd fight. I'd apologize, and we'd move on. You expected me to negotiate. She slowly nodded. I guess I did. I looked her in the eye. Marriage isn't a negotiation over basic respect. Tears filled her eyes. I know that now. I'm glad. She swallowed. I loved you. I answered without hesitation. I believe you. She looked surprised. But love isn't enough. She wiped her eyes. I would have come home and chosen you. I shook my head. You already made your choice before you packed your bag. Her shoulders dropped. I never looked at it that way. I did. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, she asked the question I knew had been waiting since the moment she walked onto the terrace. Do you hate me? No, she blinked. I don't. I just accepted what you showed me. A single tear rolled down her cheek. I've replayed that conversation 1,000 times. So have I. She looked hopeful for the first time. If I could go back, you can't. She nodded slowly. I know. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was final, and I think, for the first time, she understood the difference. Lillian looked at me for a long moment before speaking again. There isn't another chance, is there? No. The answer came so naturally that it surprised even me. She gave a slow nod. I thought maybe enough time had passed. Time changes people, I said. It doesn't erase decisions. She looked toward the parking lot below. I've wanted to tell you something. I waited. I never saw that man again after the resort. I figured. It meant nothing. I believe that too. She frowned. You do? Yes. She looked confused. Then why couldn't we fix this? Because it was never about him. She stayed quiet. I continued. It was about the woman I asked to marry me telling me she wanted to stop being my fiancée for a weekend. She lowered her eyes. I thought commitment could pause. I know. And I was wrong. Very. She took a slow breath. I've spent the last year blaming myself for what happened at the resort. You've been blaming yourself for the wrong reason. She looked back at me. The resort wasn't where you lost me. I paused. You lost me on our back patio. The moment you said you wanted one last taste of being single. She covered her mouth with one hand. I never understood that. I know. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she asked quietly, Are you seeing someone? I am. She closed her eyes for a moment before nodding. Is she good to you? Very. And you trust her? Completely. A faint smile appeared on her face. I'm glad. I believed she meant it. She looked at me one last time. I hope she's smarter than I was. I almost smiled. She doesn't think commitment is something to turn on and off. Lillian laughed softly through her tears. Fair enough. She straightened her jacket. I guess this is goodbye. I think it is. Instead of trying to hug me, she simply held out her hand. I respected that. I shook it once. Take care of yourself, Lillian. You too, Ronald. She walked toward the hotel entrance without looking back. I watched until she disappeared inside. Then I turned, walked to my car, and drove home. For the first time since our wedding had been canceled, there was nothing left unfinished. No unanswered questions, no anger, no curiosity, just a closed chapter. Sometimes people think strength means raising your voice or winning the last argument. They're wrong. Sometimes strength is knowing exactly where your line is, refusing to move it, and walking away the moment someone asks you to. People have asked me more than once if I ever regretted canceling the wedding. The answer has never changed. No, not for a single day. At first, some people thought I had overreacted. A few even said I should have given Lillian another chance because she came back. But that was never the issue. She came back to the house. She didn't come back with the same values I expected in a wife. There's a difference. Looking back now, I realize she never expected consequences. She expected a disagreement, maybe a few days of silence, maybe an argument followed by an apology. Then the wedding. She thought honesty would protect her from the cost of what she was asking. It didn't. Honesty is important. But being honest about crossing a boundary doesn't erase the boundary. If someone says, I'm going to break your trust, but at least I'm telling you first, they haven't made the betrayal smaller. They've only made it easier to recognize. I don't hate Lillian. I never did. She wasn't an evil person. She simply wasn't ready for the kind of commitment she was asking me to make, and I wasn't willing to build a marriage on uncertainty. About 2 years after everything happened, I married again. Her name was Claire Mitchell. She never asked for one last taste of being single. She never treated commitment like a burden. From the day we became serious, she acted exactly the same before and after the engagement. Steady, honest, reliable. That's what trust looks like. It isn't built with big speeches. It's built in ordinary moments when nobody is watching. Sometimes I think back to that evening on our patio. Lillian believed she was asking for one harmless weekend. I heard something completely different. I heard a woman telling me she wasn't ready to stand beside me. I believed her. That was the smartest decision I ever made. When people hear my story, they usually ask the same question. What happened after she got her one last night of freedom? The answer is simple. She got exactly what she asked for. Freedom. Just not the kind she expected. As for me, I didn't lose a wife. I avoided marrying someone who wasn't ready to become one. And every now and then, when someone tells me I should have fought harder for the relationship, I just smile. Because I did fight for it. I fought for the one thing every marriage needs before love, before romance, before forever. Respect. The day Lillian asked for one last night of freedom before our wedding, she made her choice. I made mine. I canceled the wedding. And if I had to live that week all over again, I'd make the same decision every single time. Thank you for watching.